What if I told you the real heartbreak in this scandal wasn't the affair, wasn't the DNA test, wasn't even the viral footage of Jackie, half-dressed in that luxury hotel hallway? What if I told you the true betrayal was buried in a letter? And when it leaked, it didn't just go viral, it shattered the only bond still holding this family together. Because after weeks of silence, court delays, and messy online speculation, a handwritten letter from Doug Christie to Chantel, yes, the same Chantel whose paternity was just exposed in court, has been leaked to the press. And the words inside? I still love you. Even if I'm not your father, I will always be your dad. No PR team. No legal statement. Just raw truth from a man who raised a child that wasn't biologically his and had no idea. The letter was found crumpled in Chantel's purse after she collapsed outside the courthouse. And now, with the world watching, Doug's pain is on full display. This isn't reality TV anymore. This is real pain, real love, and a broken father holding on to the only thing he has left, his daughter's heart. Not with coffee, not with blood, but with tears. At first, nobody even noticed the letter. Tucked inside Chantel's purse as EMTs wheeled her away from the courthouse steps. She was barely conscious, her hands clenched, her lips trembling. After the courtroom bombshell shattered the only truth she had ever believed in, Doug Christie was not her biological father. The world saw the drama unfold. Leaked footage. Courtroom confessions. Jackie Christie breaking down mid-trial. But what they didn't see was what Chantel carried out with her. A small, folded, handwritten letter, delivered privately by Doug just hours before the DNA results were read out loud in open court. Nobody was supposed to see it. It was never meant for the public. But once Chantel collapsed, her bag spilled, and one reporter bent down just far enough to snap a blurry photo. Within hours, the internet had the entire thing. To my baby girl, I may not be the man who gave you your eyes, your curls, or your smile. But I gave you my last name. I gave you my time, my loyalty, my whole damn heart. The letter spread like wildfire. Twitter exploded. Hashtag Doug still her dad. Hashtag it isn't love. Hashtag letter to Chantel. The blogs couldn't keep up. Comment sections filled with crying emojis. Reposts. People tagging their own fathers. Because this wasn't scandal anymore. This was love in its rawest, most broken form. Inside the courtroom, Doug hadn't spoken a word since the DNA file was read. He didn't lash out. He didn't curse Jackie. He just sat there, silent, hollow, watching the judge recite words that would end his marriage, his trust, and his identity, all in one breath. But the letter, that was his voice. You didn't grow inside me, but you grew all around me. In the way I watched you sleep. In the way I ran to your school when you fell. In the way I yelled at your first boyfriend. You are not just a memory to me. You are my daughter. People cried reading it. Even Jackie's critics paused for a second to ask, was she really heartless enough to lie to both of them for this long? And now Doug wasn't speaking to Jackie. Wasn't speaking to Chris Webber. Wasn't speaking to VH1. Only to Chantel through ink. Inside sources say the letter was written 2 nights before court resumed. Doug had locked himself in his den for 5 hours, door shut, lights off. Only a single framed photo of Chantel at age 5 on the table. His assistant found him there hours later, asleep on the couch. The letter clutched in one hand. A bottle of whiskey, half drunk beside him. He never gave it to Chantel directly. Instead, he had his lawyer slide it into her case file, just in case. Even if this whole world turns on you, I won't. You'll never stop being mine. Love always. Dad. When Chantel read it in the hallway before court, she cried so hard she nearly missed the judge's opening statement. But when the DNA was confirmed, when her reality cracked wide open in front of hundreds of eyes and cameras, she didn't scream. She didn't fight. She simply collapsed, Doug's letter still in her hand. And what about Jackie? She saw the letter too. In fact, she tried to stop it from being discussed in the courtroom after it leaked. Her legal team claimed emotional manipulation and trial interference, but the judge denied their request. The letter isn't evidence, he said. It's a father's final truth. In the audience, Mona Scott Young reportedly whispered to her producer, "Get that letter framed. This is going to be the season 14 opener."
Yeah.
Even heartbreak gets monetized. Doug, for his part, refused all interviews. He hasn't spoken publicly, but sources close to him say he's not angry, not anymore. He's just tired. He gave everything, one of his former teammates said. Not just to Jackie. To that girl. That was his baby.
And now
he has to watch her redefine herself as the daughter of a man she never knew, as the child of a lie, as the reason the whole world now knows Jackie Christie's empire was built on betrayal, burner phones, and DNA secrets. But here's the part that nobody expected. After the letter went viral, Chantel posted a single story on her private Instagram account. Just one slide. A photo of the letter sitting on her lap in the hospital. And the caption, "He may not be my father, but he will always be my dad. I love you, Doug." Mic drop. The world
stopped.
Even Jackie, watching from her hotel suite, under public scrutiny and pending lawsuits, turned off her phone. Because that sentence, that post, was the one thing she couldn't control. Doug had lost everything, but he still had her love, even if it was built on broken truth. Story. But someone close to her leaked what she allegedly told her nurse. "I feel like my whole life was a reality show, and I just got written out of the script." The pain was unbearable, but the confusion was worse. Because for the first time in her life, she was asking the question no child should ever have to ask. Who am I? Not Jackie's daughter. Not Doug's baby girl. Not even Chris Webber's confirmed child, because even he hadn't reached out. He'd gone quiet, and that silence spoke louder than any leaked voicemail ever could. But someone else wasn't staying silent anymore. Mona Scott Young. Yep, that Mona, the mastermind behind the franchise. The queen of ratings. The woman who could turn emotional trauma into Emmy-worthy television. She had had enough. Late that evening, a press release hit inboxes everywhere. Due to recent events involving Jackie Christie, VH1 will. So now Mona's team was deciding. Do they sue? Do they settle? Or do they cash in? Because one thing's for sure, this scandal had gone too far to bury. And then came Chris Webber's wife. Yes, her, the woman whose name had stayed out of headlines, the one everyone assumed knew nothing. She broke her silence in the most unexpected way, an open letter to Chantel, posted to her verified Instagram, over a black screen with soft piano music playing. She wrote, "You don't know me, but I've known of you for a very long time. I begged him to tell you. I begged him to be honest, not because I wanted to hurt your mother, but because I wanted you to know the truth while there was still time to heal from it." Chantel didn't respond publicly, but according to insiders, she was shown the message while in recovery, and she cried. Not because it brought comfort, but because it brought more questions. Chris Webber had known for years, and said nothing. Doug wasn't the only one who'd been lied to. Now, even Chantel's silence was starting to look like a scream. Back in the courtroom, Jackie was called in for a final hearing. She wore black. No lashes. No extensions. Just the ghost of who she used to be. The judge didn't look up. He simply said, "The letter written by Mr. Christie will not be considered legal evidence in any financial settlement, but it is, without question, a testament to character." And with that, the courtroom doors closed, and Jackie's fate was sealed. Doug's team had filed a full emotional abuse suit. Chantel was preparing a civil claim for identity fraud, and Mona's lawyers were circling like hawks. All that remained now was public fallout, and it was ugly. Fans who once adored Jackie's savage clapbacks now saw her as a manipulator. Mothers who cheered her confidence now distanced themselves from her legacy. And daughters everywhere rallied behind Chantel. Doug didn't post anything. He didn't need to. That letter said it all. A man betrayed. A child abandoned by truth. But a bond somehow still unbroken. The damage was already done. No statement, no apology, and no network disclaimer could undo what had unraveled over the past 72 hours. The family Jackie spent decades curating like a public masterpiece was now nothing but shattered glass beneath her heels. Outside, headlines screamed betrayal in bold font. News vans were parked outside every court, every clinic, and every hotel rumored to hold one of the key players in the most devastating scandal in basketball wives' history. But inside Jackie's hotel room, silence had become its own kind of punishment. Her phones had stopped ringing. The producers stopped defending her. Even Mona Scott Young had gone ghost. There were no more cameras, no more glam squads. Just Jackie, bare-faced, alone, watching her empire collapse one viral post at a time. Doug hadn't returned home. He hadn't returned any calls either. Not from Jackie. Not from friends. Not even from Chantel. He was seen once alone at a late-night diner just outside of town, sitting by a window, staring into his coffee like it held the answers to questions no DNA test ever could. He hadn't shaved. He hadn't slept. But his face didn't show rage anymore. It showed something colder. Something that sits deeper than anger. Acceptance. The kind of acceptance that comes when you realize everything you built was rooted in someone else's script. And that you were never the author. He didn't speak to the press. He didn't write another letter. But behind closed doors, his lawyers were already moving. The lawsuit he'd filed against Jackie was gaining traction. Emotional trauma, financial misrepresentation, identity tampering, and worst of all, deliberate concealment of paternity, the kind of charge that turns civil hearings into federal investigations. Meanwhile, Chantel remained in recovery. She had refused all visitors, even Doug. She wasn't angry. She wasn't cold. She was just still. Doctors called it emotional disassociation, the body's way of pausing reality until the brain figures out what was real and what was fabrication. The hardest part wasn't learning the truth. It was realizing the lie had felt more like home. The letter from Doug stayed folded under her pillow. Nurses confirmed she read it every night. Not out of habit, but out of need. Outside, fans camped on sidewalks. Supporters held signs with Doug's quote. One banner hung from a building near the hospital. DNA doesn't raise a child. Love does. But inside, the pain had no slogans. Only memories. Only questions. And now, another figure was about to enter the fire. Chris Webber. He had remained silent since testifying.
Disappeared, some said.
Hiding, others claimed. But silence in this storm had become its own kind of guilt. Until finally, his rep confirmed he was meeting with federal agents. No cameras. No press. Just a private session with legal counsel. Because the leaked payments, those annual donations to Jackie's fake charity, were no longer just shady. They were potentially illegal. The documents were tied directly to Webber's financial advisors. The NDA between him and Jackie had expired years ago, and yet the transfers continued, quiet, untraceable, until now. Chris hadn't returned home. His wife had reportedly left their shared residence weeks earlier. Friends said he hadn't spoken more than a few words since the letter leaked. Some believed he was broken by guilt. Others believed he was relieved the truth was finally out. But one thing was undeniable. His name was now forever tied to a scandal bigger than betrayal, bigger than reality TV, bigger than Jackie. And then, without warning, it happened. Jackie was subpoenaed again. Not by Doug. Not by Chantel. Not even by the court. But by the IRS. Because the fake charity, the same one used to funnel hush money and paternity payoffs, had filed federal tax exemptions for nearly a decade. Now, with wire transfers, audio leaks, and Chris's documents entered into record, Jackie wasn't just a fallen celebrity.
She was a suspect.
Her face, once adorned with expensive lashes and designer sunglasses, was now on official government paperwork beneath the words, subject to financial fraud investigation. Her mugshot trended within minutes. She wasn't arrested, but the expression in her eyes was punishment enough. She had gone from red carpet royalty to legal liability. Doug didn't react publicly, but a close source confirmed he watched the news from a distance. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He simply turned off the TV and went back to his silence. That was his victory. Jackie didn't speak either. Her legal team took over. But the woman who once ruled every room she walked into now needed clearance to leave her house. She was being monitored.
Watched. Investigated.
And Mona? She officially removed Jackie's name from all future production documents. Basketball Wives would return eventually, but without its queen. Because now, Jackie Christie wasn't a star. She was a cautionary tale, the one who built an empire on lies and lost her husband, her daughter, her legacy. All because she couldn't tell the truth. But even in the ashes, one thing stood tall, unshaken: a letter. Written by a man the world once mocked for being too loyal. A man who walked away from the camera but left behind the only thing that mattered: unconditional love. So after all the shouting stopped, after the cameras packed up, after the courtrooms emptied and the bloggers moved on, only one thing remained: a folded letter, crumpled at the edges, smudged with tears, written by a man who had no reason to stay, but still loved her like he never left. Because DNA doesn't raise a child. Love does. Loyalty does. And Doug Christie? He showed the world that even when your heart is shattered, real fathers don't walk away. They write letters.
But don't be fooled.
Because while Jackie's empire has burned, her secrets haven't stopped spreading.
There are still names on that donor list.
Still undisclosed payments in that charity account. And one mysterious voice recording that wasn't played in court yet. So if you think this scandal ended with heartbreak, you've got it twisted. Because the next phase isn't about love, it's about justice. Subscribe now, because in the next episode, Jackie won't be fighting for her family. She'll be fighting for her freedom. Musical note: music fades in.